Good afternoon. My name is John Mazel. I'm the publisher of Electrical Contractor magazine, and on behalf of Electrical Contractor and TED magazine, I really want to welcome each of you to this, what we think is going to be a very important 60-minute time slot for you. As a frame of reference, we have well over 400 people who have registered for this particular conference, ranging from electrical contractors to electrical distributors to very, very heavily involved and interested manufacturers. So we thank you very much for registering. And again, this next 60 minutes we think are going to be important to you, to your workers, to your customers and their lives and property, and very likely to the entire area of running and managing your own business. Very briefly, I want to thank our sponsors for this and other initiatives that we've conducted. You'll see you'll see all of their names at the top of most every slide. And a special thanks to the panelists who have taken time from their busy schedules, who will really be able to talk to you about the subject of counterfeiting in a very interesting, productive way for you. So again, thank you. So what I would like to do is move on. The counterfeiting, electrical product counterfeiting, is somewhere between $11 and $20 billion worldwide crime, and it's against our industry. It's growing rapidly. It has reached number 5 on U.S. Customs and Border Patrol seizures for 2008. We're number 5 on the list, and it continues to go up by a dramatic increase every year. What we have done today is assemble a distinguished panel to help you all better understand and hopefully increase your awareness of how to fight this crime. And some of the things that you're going to be learning today is talking about the problem itself, the problem of counterfeiting electrical products, the size of it, the scope, who's involved in this, how it directly affects you, no matter where in the chain you belong, some hopefully ideas and help on what you can do to help fight this crime, and frankly, a compilation of who else is fighting it. We're not alone, and it cannot be a one-segment type of a battle. So those are some of the areas that we intend to cover with our panel. There will be time for Q&A, certainly at the end of the presentations. We urge you to type in any specific questions. We will get to as many of them as we possibly can. And really, to kick off this particular section, I would like to introduce the CEOs of two of our primary sponsoring companies and two companies that have been very actively involved in electrical product counterfeiting. It's going to be roughly a 2-minute chat from Mr. Dennis Sadlowski, who is the president and CEO of Siemens Energy and Automation, and he'll be followed by Chris Curtis, who is the president and CEO of Schneider Electric North America. So with that, if we can queue up the introductions, and we'll be back with the panel in just a few minutes. These are each about 2 minutes.
It's an industry-wide problem, counterfeiting. While knockoffs and copycat products are common and accepted in some industries, in construction, the results can be far-reaching. Counterfeit circuit breakers pose serious safety issues. They put lives at risk. Fake parts can explode, ignite fires, and lead to injury or even death. Distributors and contractors could be held responsible for counterfeit products they sell or install, even unwittingly. So we take this seriously. To combat counterfeiting, Siemens has joined forces with other manufacturers and TED and EC magazines in an industry-wide initiative.
Well, counterfeit electrical products are infecting nearly every category in the electrical market. That's why this situation is and must be addressed collectively by our industry. At Siemens, our commitment to protecting our customers and our brand begins with education and awareness. And that's why we're so committed to driving this joint effort. Well, each organization must make a distinct commitment to do their part to eliminate demand for counterfeit electrical products. Distributors and contractors must know their supply base, be sure that products are authentic, and be suspicious of unauthorized third parties. We stand behind our products, our innovation, and especially our commitment to safety, and will do whatever is necessary to protect the integrity of our brand and our channel partners, including taking legal action when necessary. So please join us in this industry effort to assure the safety of all of our customers.
Want to know more? Visit www.sea.siemens.com/realbreakers.
Our next speaker will be Chris Curtis, again, who is President CEO of Schneider Electric North America, and then we'll be followed by a regular ongoing panel discussion.
Hi, I'm Chris Curtis from Schneider Electric. I'm the President and CEO of our North American Operating Division. As a global specialist in energy management, we are proud to be with you today as a platinum sponsor of this anti-counterfeiting initiative. In today's world, everyone should be concerned about counterfeit products. From pharmaceuticals to automobile parts to electrical products, there's a very real danger. Counterfeit products in our industry pose a significant health and safety risk. Manufacturers, distributors, contractors must acknowledge the existence of counterfeit electrical products in the United States and take the necessary steps to protect the consumer and themselves. At Schneider Electric, we're very serious about counterfeit electrical products, and we've gone to great lengths to keep counterfeit circuit breakers out of the U.S. market. Some examples: working with U.S. Customs to stop counterfeits from entering the country, working with Consumer Product Safety Commission to promote recalls of counterfeits sold into the market, working with the U.S. attorneys to bring criminal action against counterfeiters, filing 13 civil lawsuits against 40 companies involved in either the manufacturing, importation, distribution of counterfeit circuit breakers, warning our distributors, contractors, they could be liable for the sale and installation of counterfeit products, and setting up a website to provide information to the public and allow people to report counterfeiters when they see them. The best way to avoid counterfeit products is to purchase directly from the authorized distributor or retailer. And this is an industry issue that we've got to solve together. So the bottom line is counterfeiting hurts everyone, and each of us must take action to prevent electrical products from entering the market incorrectly. Thanks to NECA and NAD for supporting today's webinar in the electrical industry's fight against counterfeits.
Okay. We thank both of you for that and for taking the time to present to the audience. I'd like to now really get into the meat of what we are here to talk about today and introduce our four panelists. Each one of them is distinguished and very heavily in their own right and is prepared to talk on a number of the subjects that we discussed earlier. I'll just give you their names, and then we'll proceed to the first speaker will be Jim Pauley, who's Vice President, Industry and Government Relations with Schneider Electric Square D. He'll be followed by Kevin Yates, Vice President, Residential Products Division of Siemens Energy and Automation. Brian Monks, Vice President, Anti-Counterfeit Operations for Underwriters Laboratory. And Clark Silcox, who's the General Counsel for the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. And it's easier to say NEMA. So we'll be going in that order. So, Jim, you're up.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here today and present to you a little bit of what we've been doing at Schneider Electric and Square D Company with respect to our efforts to try to prevent counterfeiting from coming into the marketplace and many of the efforts that we've undertaken. As was said in some of the videos, this is indeed an industry-related issue. There are many products that are involved. Everyone's heard about different aspects of counterfeiting that has went on in the news. What's unique to us in the electrical industry in many situations is that the products that we're dealing with are significant safety-related products. And in our particular case, products that we have seen that have been counterfeited are indeed circuit breakers. And as everyone on this call knows, the circuit breaker really plays the heart of the electrical protection system in all of our electrical installations that we have today. With counterfeits that go on, what we've noticed over the years is that counterfeits on the outside have moved a long ways at looking more and more like the real product. That's much different than what the product actually looks like or performs like on the inside. The picture that's on the screen in front of you are literally some samples of counterfeits that we have seized. These counterfeits came out of China. The most interesting thing about that is that we don't manufacture this product at all in China. This product's manufactured in the United States. So this is not just a problem associated that people seem to think it's associated with products that are manufactured in China and then counterfeited. Counterfeiters will go after whatever products that they believe can be sold in the marketplace and that they can make money on doing so. In the case of circuit breakers, so what? If it's counterfeit, does that really matter? And as I said before, we're not really talking about, handbags or compact discs, and granted, there are problems and serious problems in those industries that have to be dealt with. But in the case of the products that we're talking about, a few examples that we found associated with circuit breakers. People are familiar, 10,000 amp interrupting ratings on breakers. We found at most some of these counterfeits might be able to interrupt 3,200 amps. The contacts weld because improper materials have been used. There's no calibration on the product, so erratically it may or may not trip. Flexible connectors inside the breaker end up being frayed, they fail. No temperature compensation. The magnetic trip doesn't work. And of course, these don't meet any industry standards that are out there. So there are serious issues that can be associated with a counterfeit electrical product. What have we been doing a little bit to try to combat this problem? We've been after this for a number of years. We have made great progress in going after counterfeits in the supply chain, and in some cases going after the source of the counterfeits as well. We've been working closely with U.S. government agencies, Customs and Border Protection, the Department of Commerce. We've been working with groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and really banding together to take on this problem across a wide range of industries. We've taken very active response in filing lawsuits against counterfeit sellers. We've had, as was mentioned in the video, 13 lawsuits against 40 different companies in the U.S. and Mexico and South America and in China. Settlements generally demand permanent actions that need to be taken or permanent injunctions, as well as, in cases, Consumer Product Safety Commission administered recalls of those products. We've taken about 500,000 counterfeit breakers, in our case, kept those off of the market, and about another 225,000 have been subject to recall. We've also participated in conjunction with other groups and in conjunction with the Chinese government at raids in China. And what's important and plays a role even in this webcast is making sure we inform our channel partners and our customers about counterfeiting issues and where they can get other information. What's it mean to you? For end users, counterfeit electrical products have great potential to create personal injury and property damage. From the manufacturer's perspective, the authentic manufacturer of the product's not going to stand behind a counterfeit. Show up on their doorstep with a counterfeit product, and that manufacturer is going to say, not our product. You're in a situation that really ends up being what I refer to as no man's land, because it's likely almost impossible to find the manufacturer of the counterfeit product. For contractors and distributors, certainly there are liability issues in knowingly selling counterfeit products. You may also be responsible even if you did not have direct knowledge that the product was counterfeit. And that really leads me to probably one of the key and most important messages. Know the source where you're purchasing from. In our case, for Square D, for Schneider Electric, we sell through authorized distribution channels. If you want to try to understand what those are, you can go to our website, punch in the area where you're at, and it will give you a list of authorized distributors for our electrical products. Check with the manufacturer if you're not sure. The old adage, If the price is too good to be true, we used to say, it's probably not a good deal. Well, in this case, it may very well be counterfeit. Look for suspicious differences in the product, in color, in shape, in the weight of the product, in the labels, misspelling of words, those sort of items that you might be able to find. Beware and be aware of companies that are being sued for counterfeit sales. Those have been very well advertised in many cases, and you certainly want to be aware of that as you purchase. Most importantly, and I want to thank all of the attendees as well for attending, is staying informed on this issue is the most critical. We've put some various websites up here that are very good. NEMA has some resources as well as other organizations, and I would encourage you to visit those websites and learn more about what's going on in total. I'll just sum up by saying we've made really great progress in this effort. Our brand, well-trusted, well-respected in the marketplace, and by going and taking the aggressive action that we've done, we've maintained that brand and that well-recognition that we've got and ensured that we keep counterfeit products off the market in our case. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who will continue on giving some of the perspective that they've run into on counterfeiting. Kevin?
Thank you, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As John mentioned earlier, my name is Kevin Yates. I'm the Vice President of the Residential Products Division for Siemens Energy and Automation. I hope you will find this webinar very insightful, and I look forward to sharing a brief manufacturing perspective on what we at Siemens consider to be a very serious topic. Let me begin by stating that Siemens, we see counterfeiting as a significant issue, an issue that is growing, and an issue that is not just isolated to one company or even one part of the market, but rather an industry-wide issue. Preventing and eliminating counterfeit products from our market will require a concerted effort of all parties, and it should not be seen solely as the responsibility of the manufacturers. The counterfeiting issue in this country is growing exponentially as counterfeiters become more sophisticated and more brazen. The problem is especially troubling in the residential, electrical, and commercial construction markets, really for two reasons. Components like circuit breakers are relatively easy to counterfeit due to the technology, and as products and solutions become more complex but provide yet more safety value for the end user, the value proposition for counterfeiters becomes more attractive. Take, for example, the new combination arc fault circuit breaker. Great technology designed to improve electrical safety in the home, but a much higher value proposition for counterfeiters. In fact, the impact of counterfeit businesses cost businesses about $250 billion annually in the U.S. and more than $500 billion globally. But the most compelling reason to stop counterfeiting is that counterfeit products create serious safety issues. They put lives at risk because fake parts can explode, ignite fires, and lead to injury and even death. We at Siemens are seriously concerned about the safety aspect. There is a real need for education on this topic. A recent survey by Electrical Contractor magazine showed that almost 86% of people couldn't tell the difference between real or fake breakers. Let me state that again. 9 out of 10 contractors that were surveyed stated they could not tell a fake from an authentic product. In that same survey, 68% of the respondents did not realize that circuit breakers marketed as surplus, overstocked, or refurbished may in fact be counterfeits. That's why Siemens has joined forces with other manufacturers such as Square D and other well-known, highly regarded industry groups such as NEMA, NECA, and UL in this industry-wide effort to create more awareness of the issue. The important point to note here is that manufacturers are not legally liable for products they do not make or sell. But we do have a customer base and a brand that are both worth protecting. we take that responsibility very serious. However, as distributors and contractors, you might be responsible for counterfeit products that you sell and install, even unknowingly. So what is Siemens doing about the issue? Well, we are seriously concerned about safety of our consumers and our customers, as well as protection of our brand. That's why we have developed a plan of action to combat the counterfeit breaker situation that might enter our market. Our approach includes really 5 key points. It starts with education. As Jim mentioned, we are focused on educating our target audience and our customers about the risks of counterfeit breakers and how to identify them. Working with TED Magazine and EC Magazine, and with our platinum sponsorship of this anti-counterfeiting campaign, Siemens is demonstrating a commitment to be a market leader. We want to ensure that our channel partners and our customers and our end users are aware of the threat and the serious danger of counterfeit products. Secondly, identification. We're acting on that commitment to be market leaders in this area by building relationships with authorities to help identify and remove counterfeits from the market. We're working closely with port authorities, holding training sessions, responding to inquiries, and supporting with information. Third, we're investigating. Our commitment to market leadership continues with a commitment to invest the necessary resources, both human and capital, to fight this problem. We have hired secret shoppers and put them in the market and investigating in the U.S. to root out counterfeit products. And as we have uncovered issues, we have taken appropriate action. Fourth, rewards. We have actually had channel partners work with us to help root out suspect counterfeit sources. And for this, we are willing to partner with them and even offer rewards to report issues to us that we can investigate, again, to help protect our customers, our end users, and our brand. And finally, prosecution. We are acting on that commitment to be a market leader in this area by aggressively prosecuting and will prosecute any person that we find counterfeiting a Siemens product. Again, our responsibility is to protect the safety of our end users, the interests of our customers, and the Siemens shareholder. So what can you do? To be certain that products are authentic, distributors and contractors should purchase directly from manufacturers such as Siemens or from manufacturer-authorized distributors. Jim mentioned it earlier. We work through authorized distributors. At the same time, you should be highly suspicious of products purchased from unauthorized third parties. Contractors should also know that they can be held legally liable. In fact, a good rule of thumb to remember is the closer to the end user, the more liability you have. Thus, a contractor installing a counterfeit product has tremendous liability. Again, Siemens is committed to educating our customer base and protecting our end users, and we will continue to protect our brand. However, much of the responsibility in this matter lies with the contractor and the distributor if the counterfeit product is sold and installed in our market. So how can you recognize counterfeit products? Jim mentioned several of these earlier. You can look for a number of suspicious indicators. The price. If the price seems too good, it probably is. If there are no instructions, warnings, or warranties with the product, that should be a sign. Markings and other features such as packaging look different or missing, or they don't include certification marks, or they have incorrect colors on the labels, or shapes or designs of the product, missing components. The words on the product or packaging are misspelled. The country of origin is different from a genuine source. And product defects or product performance is different than typical experience. Again, I would also leave you with a website where you can find more information on Siemens' approach to this. But again, as mentioned by Jim, and as I'm sure you'll hear in just a moment from Brian and Clark, this is a serious issue, and it's not an issue for one manufacturer or even for manufacturers. It's an industry-wide problem that we must all tackle together. With that, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm now going to turn it over to Brian Monk with UL. Brian?
Good morning, everybody, or I guess good afternoon, depends where you are. A lot has been said before between Jim and Kevin about the threat of counterfeiting. Doing this for 15 years now, and I got to say it is getting worse, especially in this economic downturn. People are looking for these bargains, and we're seeing now individuals who may not counterfeited before, but because they're looking to make a little extra cash, have started to get into the counterfeiting business. Counterfeiting is a crime of opportunity. And it's basically there's really no downside to it. We've noticed in the past with counterfeiting, it used to be drugs were the big thing, make a lot of money. Now you can make it with counterfeit goods. I always tell people, if you bring in $100,000 worth of narcotics into the port of New York and get caught, you're going to do some serious jail time. You bring the same amount of counterfeit product like circuit breakers into the port of New York, well, first of all, luckily you can get caught. Maybe you get a fine, but you're certainly not going to do any jail time. And at the end of the day, you still have $100,000. So we're finding that organized crime is definitely going towards the use of counterfeit products. And this is not just an issue to the United States. This is an issue to the world. This is global. There is no industry or company that's not open to someone counterfeiting it. And as we talk to our trademark people, manufacturers, if you're a leader in your field, I can tell you right now you're getting counterfeited just because there's money to be made. The risk of prosecution, as I said before, is minimal. I think when John started earlier talking about counterfeiting of electrical products being number 5 for the most seized product by U.S. Customs, 6-7 years ago, it was 0. So part of this is education to Customs, to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to FBI, Secret Service, whoever may help us to try and stop these products coming into the country. On an average at UL, we probably working with CBP, Customs and Border Protection, sees about 3 shipments a week and have so for the last 15 years. Counterfeit batteries, counterfeit shampoo, counterfeit liquor, anything you can think of, the counterfeiters have already thought it up and made a business out of it. There's some areas where the counterfeiters have a bigger share in the market than a legitimate manufacturer. You can't make much money that way if the counterfeiters are beating you at your own game. Counterfeit cell phone batteries. Can you imagine having this phone to your ear and all of a sudden it explodes? It wouldn't be a very good thing. Or walking through the terminal at the airport and all of a sudden, an explosion goes off. I think you're going to miss your flight. People may think you're carrying something, an explosive on the plane. Pharmaceuticals, food stuff. I can tell you right now, counterfeit Lipitor is not manufactured, as you see in the slide, using rudimentary equipment. Counterfeiters don't care about our health. Counterfeit fire sprinklers. Explosion of hotels and new buildings, especially in Asia, have made a new market now for counterfeit sprinkler heads. As Jim and Kevin have pointed out, counterfeit circuit breakers. These breakers are so good that you really can't tell. You need to be an expert in counterfeit in breakers to even figure out what's wrong with these. But they certainly don't work. and you can see from the next picture, they explode. What I want to tell people is that we all have a duty, and we can all play a role when it comes to stopping counterfeit products. If you're a distributor, check your distribution line. As I said before, make sure it's pure. Make sure you're buying from a vendor you know who they are. Maybe you want to do some source inspections prior to shipment if you're getting it from overseas. Because once the product's been seized, it's like getting an IRS audit. A lot of bad things are going to happen all the way down the line, and you don't really want to be there. I know Clark will talk about the liability part of it later, but it's really important that you know who you're buying from. As I think Jim said it before, or Kevin, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. A lot of people believe they're great negotiators. I can tell you right now, the counterfeiters get up every day. They get 24 hours a day to think about how to beat the system. So if someone pulls up in a truck to a construction site and says, "Hey, mister, I've got a case of breakers I got from my brother-in-law Al, doesn't need them anymore. Do you want to buy them? I give them to you really cheap." I ask you to be cautious. Verify if they're real. If they got a UL mark on them, certainly call UL. If it's got a trademark holder's name on it, call the trademark holder up. Ask their opinion. You do not want to put this stuff in a building and then find out later on it's bad. Again, a lot of problems will happen. It's something we all can do. We work very closely with law enforcement, Customs, the FBI, Interpol, Europol. We all need to stand united and not accept that counterfeiters can sell their products at will. We need to take away the demand driver. And if people are buying stuff and tainting the distribution lines or selling it off the back of a truck at a construction site, if we all stop buying it, the demand drops, the counterfeiters have no place to sell their wares, and we can start reducing counterfeiting. And it's education, awareness. It's working with people that want to help you. I found out in my 15 years doing this work, there's a lot of good people in the world that will help us fight counterfeiting. The only good place for counterfeit products is in the dump. From our perspective at UL, once a product's been seized by law enforcement, it'll never see the light of day. We want the product destroyed. These products are inherently hazardous. Counterfeiters do not use quality control. I can tell you from experience, counterfeiters could care less about your loved ones. All they care about is the dollar, the yen, the mark, whatever they can make money. That is their goal. It is not to give you good product. So, again, united we stand, divided we fall. I want to thank you for your time. I don't want to run too long. I'd like to pass it up to Clark Silcox, General Counsel of NEMA.
Thank you, Brian. I'm pleased to also thank NAD and NECA for organizing this webinar today. One of the key messages I want to deliver here is right there in the title that I've given this presentation, and that includes that we need to educate and inform about the risks of dealing or trafficking in counterfeit products, even if done unwittingly. And I'll get into that in the course of my presentation in a few minutes. Counterfeiting is technically and legally about a person putting someone's registered trademark on a product or a service who is not authorized to do so. And when I say trademark, I'm not referring to just trademarks on goods, but it could also include certification marks such as we're familiar with in the case of Underwriters Laboratories and CSA and the NOM mark in Mexico and the ETL Intertech. marks. All of those certification marks have been knocked off at one time or another, and what you see here on this slide are some well-known trademarks in the electrical industry. And the point I want to make is that no manufacturer's mark is exempt. Virtually all these marks, I want to say, I'm not familiar with the counterfeit Baldor product yet, but I think as to all the other marks you see up there, they have been counterfeited at one time or another, and that would even include the Energy Star mark that we see that's owned by the U.S. government and the Environmental Protection Agency. But trademarks are not limited to the manufacturing sector, and those of you from the electrical contracting and electrical distribution channels will see some well-known names up here on this slide. And just as a manufacturer's trademark or name is subject to counterfeiting, a distributor's or contractor's name could be subject to at some point in time. There you have on the top bullet point, you have the legal definition of a trademark. If you were to ask a lawyer what's the definition of a trademark or a brand name, he'll tell you, he says, well, that's what identifies the origin or source of goods and services, and that's certainly correct. But in the parlance of the marketplace, the trademark or the trade name really means two things, reputation and value. Not only where it came from, the legal definition, but the commercial significance of the trademark and trade name. And what I'm trying to point out next is that it's very important to brand owners that the customer's perceived value of their product or service equal or be exceeded by the value that's delivered to the customer. In other words, that there's no negative gap between the perceived value of a trade name or trademark and the actual value of the goods and services under that mark that are delivered. And here you see what I think most business schools will tell you are the features associated with perceived value. Reliability, consistency, that the product or service does not cause problems but solves or delivers solutions to problems, and that also that the brand name is associated with, in many cases, a certain level of innovation, that the brand name is a source of improvements or future improvements in the product line and a source of new value. You heard Kevin Yates earlier talk about next generation circuit breakers that are known as AFCIs. The real thing we want to be that a manufacturer or a brand owner is concerned about is that there's no negative gap that exists between the perceived value of the consumer and the brand and the actual value. I mean, the easiest example I think for all of us to think of is the McDonald's and the Golden Arches trademark. McDonald's strives that no matter where you go into one of their retail operations, whether it's in San Diego, California, or Ontario, Canada, that you will find the same consistent, reliable delivery of hamburgers and French fries that you experience in one place when you go to a place in another geographic territory. For electrical manufacturers, there's not much different here. But it's critical to understand that the value proposition that I've been talking about, that there be no gap, no negative gap between perceived and actual value, is a principle that applies throughout the supply chain. And so what we're dealing with here is not only the value supplied by the manufacturer, but also the value supplied by the distributor and the value supplied by the contractor and installer and ultimately the collective value delivered by everyone in that chain to the end user, and that there is no negative gap between the perceived and the actual value. That's very, very important. But here's what counterfeits do. They break the value chain. They destroy the value chain. Because when a counterfeit enters the supply chain, wherever it may enter, there is a disconnect between the end user, the contractor, or the distributor, because they're no longer linked to the brand owner. I think, as Jim Pauley said, you can be certain that if you knock on a manufacturer's door holding a counterfeit product and saying, "I need some help here. This product is defective," you're not going to find any. You're not going to find any sympathy here, because the value chain has been broken by the counterfeit. Counterfeit electrical products, and I've been working at this for 5 or 6 years now, and I've been working with all of the other gentlemen on the phone call today. Counterfeit, our experience is uniform, and I'll say that not with respect to just circuit breakers, which have been specifically mentioned, but the whole host of different types of counterfeit electrical products that we have found in the marketplace over the past 10 years. Counterfeit electrical products are almost always substandard. They're either substandard in their performance because they don't work as well, or they don't last as long. But they're also substandard because they present an increased risk to health and safety of the users. And what that translates into is an increased liability risk to the distribution channel. Counterfeits lead to a negative gap between perceived value and actual value, and therefore the value chain, as I said before, is broken, and this has ramifications for everyone in the supply channel. So now I want to cover with you some examples of the types of counterfeit electrical products that we've seen in the marketplace. Here's a picture that I think you're familiar with. It's probably shown widely today in the industry on either NEMA literature. I think Brian included it in his slide that as an example of a counterfeit circuit breaker that was tested at a UL lab and which exploded when it was subjected to a standard test that the industry uses for circuit breakers. And in this case, it was probably a case where I think it didn't. It tripped. It was and it tripped very late, or didn't trip at all. Excuse me. Here is an example of a circuit breaker that was found outside of the United States. I think you'll recognize it as an IEC style circuit breaker, but there were virtually no parts inside the circuit breaker. When Jim Pauley said they're looking real good on the outside, but it's what's hidden on the inside that is the key to the counterfeits here. Not only have they cheated on some costs of manufacture here, they virtually cheated on all costs except for the plastic housing of this counterfeit breaker. There's nothing here that's operational. And this isn't the only example that we've heard of. But I use this you saw some other pictures, I think, on Jim's slides that showed counterfeit wire that had inadequate wire gauge. The batteries, it's a case, the batteries look real great on the outside, but it's the chemistry or the design on the inside that requires x-rays to detect. That's the real problem in our industry. And that's why when asked, well, what can we do to prevent this from getting into the supply channel, because it's so difficult to tell physically, by physical inspection, without using some kind of either opening up the product, which you're not supposed to do, or x-raying the product, which is time-consuming and inspects. It's the key message here has to be know the source of your product, and if you source it from an authorized source, then there is an extremely high likelihood, I'd say close to 100%, that you can count on it being a genuine product. Here's an example of a power strip that was plugged into the wall, and a normal current drawing on it, and within 5 minutes the wiring was unable to carry the current because it was an inadequate wire gauge, and it started to smoke and then burst into flames, as you can see here. Counterfeit ground rods. We estimate that perhaps up to 750,000 counterfeit ground rods came into the marketplace in 2007, all of which the copper coating was just a bare fraction of what standards required for the ground rods. Ground rods normally will have a durability of about 40 years in the ground, protected from degradation with the standard 10 mils or more of copper on the ground rod. These had at best like 2 mils or 2.5 mils, 3 mils of copper on them. They'll last about 7 or 8 years, and then they won't provide the protection to the infrastructure of the home or your appliances that the ground rods are expected to provide. Here's the case of a policeman in Pennsylvania who was carrying a high-powered flashlight containing counterfeit lithium-ion batteries. The flashlight was on his belt, and while he was wearing it, the batteries in the flashlight exploded. And fortunately, he was wearing a Kevlar vest at the time that protected him from personal injury. But you can see the damage to his shirt, his uniform, here in this photo. Actually, by looking at the fine print on the batteries, you can actually see typos, typographical errors on the warning. Instead of saying risk of fire and burns, in this case they misspelled it and said risk of fire and bumps. The other feature of these batteries is that normally they will contain a little plastic ring at the end, which causes the metal surface of the negative end of the battery to be elevated, so that if the batteries are misinstalled, the negative recessed ring will prevent the ends from contacting one another, creating a danger to the consumer. Here in the case of the counterfeit lithium-ion batteries, that ring was missing, and therefore the safety feature was missing as well, and posed danger to the user. If you don't think people can die from counterfeits, here's the story. This was a power adapter with a counterfeit Game Boy mark on it that a gentleman bought in Thailand, and he gave it to his son so that he can continue to play with his Game Boy while on vacation in Thailand. And just a few hours later, they found the boy dead on the floor, clutching the power adapter. The reason, substandard design, the wires on the inside that obviously nobody could see were too close together in the manufacture of the product, creating the hazardous situation. I want to talk a little bit about this case from the pharmaceutical industry. Brian said I would discuss the liability issues. The pharmaceutical industry has been one sector where we have seen several product liability cases involving counterfeit products. Certainly in the case of pharmaceuticals, there's parallels with our industry here, namely the concern with health and safety risks, and two other things. One, just like we deal with fake counterfeit electrical products that is made by an unauthorized source. The pharmaceutical industry does deal with fake drugs made by an unauthorized source. But both industries also suffer from another problem that is also an example of counterfeiting. And this involves the relabeling of genuine goods. We've seen some examples of what we call up-amping in the case of genuine circuit breakers that are relabeled to be what they are not. In the pharmaceutical industry, they call this up-dosing, where a low-dosage product, the genuine product, is relabeled as a higher dosage product. Obviously, if somebody has a serious illness, a doctor is likely to prescribe a higher dosage of a product, and as a consequence, that product has a higher value in the marketplace. And so what the counterfeiters are doing is they're relabeling the lower cost, low dosage products as higher value, high dosage products. But when it gets to the patient, obviously they're not getting the dosage that the doctor who prescribed them thought that they were getting. And so here in this case, the counterfeiter obtained low dosage Epogen and relabeled it or updosed it as higher dosage Epogen. A well-known wholesaler in the pharmaceutical trade bought the counterfeit, supposedly high dosage Epogen, and later resold it to a well-known retailer, CVS. CVS then sold the dosage to a liver transplant patient, and the liver transplant patient, instead of his condition improving, which it should have, got worse because he did not have the correct dosage of Epogen. Product liability litigation followed, and here's what happened. As you would expect, the brand name owner, in this case it was Amgen, who owned the Epogen trademark, was dismissed from the lawsuit. But the wholesaler and the retailer were both left in the lawsuit under principles of product liability law. If you sell a product which is defective, and that product causes harm to an individual, that individual has a claim in product liability for any injury caused by a defective product. Obviously, to be liable, you have to be a seller of that product, and that's a black letter principle of product liability law. So AmerisourceBergen and CVS were clearly sellers of the product, but Amgen was not. So Amgen gets dismissed. Now, the other fact that came out in this case was that Amerisource occasionally purchased source product not directly from Amgen and others, but also went out into the gray market to source product. For a product liability case, the fact that Amerisource bought in the gray market is not normally a relevant factor because, as I said, if you're the seller of a defective product that causes injury, you're liable for that product. It makes no difference whether you got it from an authorized source or not. However, the court cited the purchasing of Amerisource going into the gray market as risky behavior on the part of AmerisourceBergen because the counterfeit product was known to infiltrate gray market distribution. And the court made a point of saying Amerisource was in the best position to prevent the counterfeit product from getting into the distribution channel. So while the comment about gray market might have been gratuitous for liability purposes, the real significance of that remark was significant as between the wholesaler and CVS, the reseller. Essentially what the court was saying here is that because it was the wholesaler who engaged in this risky behavior by purchasing in the gray market, they became more culpable in this case, as between the wholesaler and the retailer, and what that translates into is that either in terms of a judgment or in terms of settlement or in terms of indemnity, the wholesaler was probably going to have to pay more to the victim in this case than the retailer because of the culpability equation. Our industry is not immune from this problem. Here is an example of an electrical manufacturer who learned for the first time that it had a counterfeiting problem because it got sued in a product liability lawsuit. This company makes electrical connectors and strands, and basically the product was being used as a connector on a ropes course, a recreational activity program. And the company had warned for years that using its particular product was inappropriate on ropes courses, and said it would not be responsible for that use, and sent out warnings to the entire distribution channel about the use of the product. Well, this particular ropes course designer decided to go to a Chinese internet website, and lo and behold, it found the company's product for sale there, and purchased it and imported it into the United States. An accident occurred, and somebody is injured on the ropes course, and not only is the ropes course company, but also the company that built the ropes course and ultimately the brand owner of the connector here brought into a product liability lawsuit. Obviously, the brand owner gets out of the product liability lawsuit, but then also what ensues from this is counterfeiting litigation of the type that Jim Pauley described between the importer of the counterfeit Chinese product and the brand owner here in the United States. So where do we find the counterfeit electrical products in the United States? What I can tell you uniformly from my now 5 or 6 years of experience in investigating this and working with manufacturers and working with others like UL and CSA on this issue is that the products are found outside of what I call the value chain. Okay, but sometimes they infiltrate the value chain. We find them in flea markets and with street vendors. Brian Monks can tell you about a whole bunch of cases where counterfeit extension cords and Duracell and Energizer can tell you about cases where counterfeit batteries have been found in flea markets and with street vendors. We also find them in deep discount retail stores, unauthorized distribution, as I explained before. And then we find them with customers of those distributors. And sometimes those customers can be part of what I regard as our normal value chain. And so the products are coming into the normal value chain from outside the value chain. And what is a huge source of this product, I think everybody on the phone here can tell you today, all the speakers, is the Internet is a source of these products, primarily what I call English language Chinese websites, where Chinese manufacturers are showing what they will call a picture of a look-alike counterfeit product, typically with the trademarks airbrushed off of them. But then when they deliver it to you, it will have the counterfeit trademark on them. So that wraps up my presentation. I just want to make one more comment here. We can deal with the case of substandard electrical products with counterfeit trademarks on them, but there's also substandard with no counterfeit trademarks. And I want to close by bringing to your attention a very recent case that was brought by New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo up in New York recently against a deep discount retail store. Not only did their investigation uncover counterfeit extension cords bearing counterfeit UL marks that had substandard wire gauge on them. But they also found extension cords without any mark whatsoever, had no manufacturer's mark, no certification mark on the product. But Attorney General Cuomo also went after the retailer for the distribution of those substandard products on a non-counterfeiting legal theory, namely fraud. The testing of the product, the unlabeled product, showed that it was I think a 22 AWG, but it was stamped with a 16 AWG mark on it, and the packaging also indicated that the wire gauge was 16 AWG. And so he went after them on a consumer protection theory under New York's consumer protection law for false labeling. So the retailer was prosecuted both in the case of the counterfeit with the counterfeit certification marks on them, and they were also prosecuted for the unlabeled product as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clark. And again, I want to thank each of the panelists, Jim, Kevin, Brian, obviously again, Clark. We're running a little bit beyond our allotted 60-minute time, and some of you may have to leave us. I will very quickly, we may have chance or time for maybe one or two questions, but again, I would like to direct you to any of those who are interested. There are several excellent websites that are out there. There's one that is shared by both TED Magazine at tedmag.com or ecmag.com, which is ours, and it's entitled, or you can just go directly, it's called counterfeitscankill.com. Counterfeits Can Kill is one word, .com. ESFI has a website, obviously NEMA, and various manufacturers. This is a huge issue for our industry. It literally is a matter of, or can be a matter of life and death, including life and death of a business because of the litigation that you've heard today. There are a lot of white papers on the counterfeitscankill.com. There's literally a plethora of information available. You can go there. You can also refer back to this particular session. I do have, we have several questions, and this is really for anyone on the panel. Jamie Quintana asks, what do you do if the client asks us to install a product that is clearly counterfeit? I think I can answer that as a publisher, but I really want the someone on the panel just to, if you can, just give a very brief response. Is there anybody out there?
John, this is Jim Pauley.
Yes, Jim.
I would respond, as difficult as it is, I think the answer would be I would refuse to install it. And I know that creates stress on the client relationship, but ultimately installing that counterfeit product certainly places you in a very, very exposed position from a liability perspective.
That would have been my answer.
And especially if you had prior knowledge where they can show intent, and if it causes bodily harm or even something worse, like I said earlier in my presentation, you're going to be in a lot of bad predicament. So, if someone told you to jump off a cliff, I don't think you would do it because you know you're going to get hurt. Same here, you shouldn't do something that you think later on is going to bite you.
I think that we have heard from our four panelists about as broad a discussion as we have had on this particular subject. There is more of it. I want to thank again all of the panelists, all of our sponsors who have really, this has been a year-long endeavor on the part of both TED Magazine and Electrical Contractor. We want to thank all of you. This session will be archived on On24. You will have information. And if some of you had to leave early, that's okay too. But we're not going to give up. None of the people and the companies and organizations on this panel, including NAD, which is TED Magazine, including NECA, which is Electrical Contractor Magazine, and others. This is literally a life and death issue, and it affects every single player in this industry, from manufacturers to distributors to installers, and mostly it affects the safety and the liability of our customers. So again, I just want to thank you all very much. We hope you at least got enough information to get you going and do some more checking. As they say, please be careful out there, because there are people who have no compunction about destroying you or your business or your customers and their property. We're another line of defense in this area, and we need to work together as industry partners, and that includes all of us. So with that, again, we thank you very much. Appreciate your time and attention. And I guess we'll sign off at that point. Thank you.